He changed music forever. He built an empire from nothing, and for decades, he was untouchable, a symbol of success, swagger, and power. But behind the designer suits, champagne celebrations, and multi-million-dollar deals, something darker was always lurking. And now, it's finally surfacing. Sean Combs, known to the world as Diddy, or Puff Daddy, or P. Diddy, depending on the decade, isn't just a hip-hop mogul. He's a cultural icon, a kingmaker, a name that carries weight in music, fashion, television, and business. From Harlem streets to billionaire status, his journey has been painted as a story of brilliance, hustle, and vision. And sure, the story has all those things, but it's also laced with shadows, whispers, and secrets no one wanted to say out loud. For years, rumors followed him like a ghost. Artists who claimed they were silenced, relationships that ended under strange circumstances, mysterious deaths that were never fully explained. And recently, lawsuits, explosive allegations, and even federal agents raiding his homes in broad daylight. The media is calling it the unraveling of a legend. Fans are left stunned, wondering, was any of it real? Or was it all a carefully built illusion, held together by fear, fame, and silence? But here's the thing. This isn't just a story about Diddy. This is a story about power. What happens when someone reaches the top and stays there for so long that no one dares to question them anymore? It's about the music industry's darker underbelly, the blurred lines between loyalty and control, the way fame can be used as a weapon, and how those at the top often protect their own, no matter what's happening behind closed doors. And now, piece by piece, that protection is cracking. In the last year alone, Diddy has faced allegations so disturbing, they've forced entire industries to pause. One of his former partners came forward with claims of manipulation, violence, and control. The lawsuit didn't go to court. It was settled almost immediately, but the impact was instant. More people began speaking up. More stories surfaced. And suddenly, Diddy's name wasn't just trending for his music, it was trending for everything he'd tried to keep hidden. Then came the raids. Federal agents swarming his properties. No charges? Yet. But the message was clear. Whatever's been protected is now being investigated. And that's where we come in. In this video, we're going to unpack the rise, the power, and the controversies surrounding Diddy. We'll go beyond the headlines to look at the pattern, the people left behind, the careers cut short, the stories that were buried until now. Because when you've had this much power for this long, the fall doesn't just shake the music industry, it shakes everything. This is the story they didn't want you to hear. This is the dark side of Diddy. Long before the billion-dollar businesses, the private jets, and the global fame, Sean Combs was just another kid from Harlem trying to survive. Born in 1969, his story begins in a neighborhood known more for its struggle than its stars. And when his father was shot and killed in a drug deal gone wrong, Diddy was just 2 years old. Too young to understand, but old enough to carry the weight of that loss for the rest of his life. That trauma, it became fuel. While most kids were still figuring out who they were, Diddy had already decided what he'd become. Undeniable. He didn't wait for doors to open. He kicked them down. As a young college student at Howard University, he snagged an unpaid internship at Uptown Records, one of the hottest R&B labels at the time. But it wasn't long before he was doing more than just fetching coffee. His hustle was unmatched. He had a sharp eye for talent and a relentless drive that didn't take no for an answer. And then, the first big move. After being fired from Uptown for being, in his own words, too ambitious, Diddy founded Bad Boy Records in 1993. It was a bold move, but he wasn't playing small anymore. He had a vision, and he was about to change the entire sound of East Coast hip-hop. Bad Boy exploded almost overnight. Diddy discovered a young Brooklyn rapper named Christopher Wallace. The world would come to know him as the Notorious B.I.G. That partnership wasn't just good business. It was a cultural moment. Biggie's gritty bars and Diddy's polished production created a formula that dominated the charts and redefined what rap could be. But it wasn't just Biggie. Under Bad Boy, Diddy launched or elevated the careers of Faith Evans, 112, Total, Mase, and more. The music was loud, the parties were legendary, and the brand was everywhere, from MTV to fashion runways. Sean Combs didn't just want to be successful, he wanted to become a brand, a movement, a force, and he did. From Sean John clothing to Ciroc vodka, reality TV, and even acting roles, Diddy became a symbol of what was possible, the street kid who turned into a mogul. Forbes started ranking him among hip-hop's wealthiest. Magazine covers labeled him the blueprint. And the message was clear: Diddy doesn't lose. But behind that shine, behind the glossy music videos, the champagne-soaked interviews, and the screaming fans, there were already rumors. Quiet complaints from artists about money. Whispers that Diddy wasn't just building a label, he was controlling it like a dictatorship. For every hit song, there was a story of someone left behind, broke, bitter, or broken. Still, none of that mattered in the 90s and early 2000s. Diddy was at the top, and from the outside, it looked like he was just getting started. But as we'll see in the next chapter, the higher you rise, the more dangerous it becomes to look down. As Diddy's fame grew, so did his reputation, not just as a hitmaker, but as a master businessman. He wasn't just creating music, he was creating brands, building artists from the ground up and turning them into commercial machines. To the public, it looked like the dream scenario: sign with Diddy and you blow up. But behind the scenes, a very different story was unfolding. Over the years, multiple artists who once called Bad Boy Records home have come forward with strikingly similar stories. Stories of manipulation, one-sided contracts, and creative control that felt more like a cage than a partnership. Let's start with Mase. In the late 90s, he was one of Bad Boy's biggest stars. Smooth flow, flashy style. He was the perfect fit for Diddy's empire. But at the height of his success, Mase walked away. Years later, he revealed that he was never properly compensated, claiming Diddy owned his publishing rights and refused to sell them back, even after Mase offered millions. In a now viral post, Mase said, "You can't say you love someone and enslave them at the same time." That quote echoed through the industry like a shot fired. But he wasn't alone. The Lox, a hardcore rap trio also signed to Bad Boy, famously feuded with Diddy over their contract. They said he took the lion's share of their publishing, leaving them with scraps while he cashed in. It got so bad that fans started a campaign called Free the Lox, and the group eventually had to go on radio, publicly begging Diddy to release them from their deal. Diddy eventually relented, but only after public pressure and years of bad blood. Then there's Danity Kane and Day 26, two groups formed on Diddy's MTV reality shows. They had breakout success, but both fell apart just as quickly as they rose. Members have since spoken out about toxic environments, creative stifling, and feeling like pawns in a reality TV hustle where ratings mattered more than the music. Over and over, artists told the same story. Diddy used them, made millions off their talent, then moved on the moment they stopped serving his image. And when they tried to speak up, they were silenced, legally or culturally. But here's what's even more interesting. These accusations never seemed to stick. No matter how many people spoke out, Diddy's reputation remained polished in public. He continued receiving awards, collaborating with rising stars, and being celebrated as a genius entrepreneur. Why? Because in the music industry, power protects itself. Diddy wasn't just an executive, he was a gatekeeper. Speaking against him meant potentially burning bridges across the entire industry. And for up-and-coming artists, that was a risk most couldn't afford to take. Still, as more former collaborators found their voices on platforms like YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram, the cracks in Diddy's image began to spread. Fans started asking questions. Critics began re-evaluating his legacy. Was he a mogul or a manipulator? And just when it seemed like things were starting to cool down, that maybe, just maybe, Diddy had weathered the storm, the spotlight shifted again. But this time, it wasn't about artists or contracts. It was about what was allegedly happening behind closed doors in his personal life. And what came next changed everything. In the public eye, Diddy was more than a mogul. He was a symbol of success, of influence, and of the life most people could only dream about. But for years, another narrative was unfolding in the shadows. One far more complicated, far more personal, and far more disturbing. His relationships were always high profile. From superstars like Jennifer Lopez to longtime love Kim Porter to rising singer Cassie, Diddy's love life often made more headlines than his business moves. Lavish gifts, exotic vacations, red carpet appearances. To the outside world, it all looked like a fantasy. But fantasies are often illusions. Let's start with Kim Porter, the mother of 3 of Diddy's children, and someone he often referred to as his soulmate. She died suddenly in 2018 from pneumonia, but in the years since, rumors have swirled. People close to her hinted at long-standing tension. Friends said she wanted to write a tell-all book, and when she passed, many fans felt the timing was too convenient. While no official wrongdoing has ever been tied to Diddy, whispers continue to this day, the kind that never seem to fade. Then came Cassie. She was just 19 when she met Diddy, and their relationship would span over a decade. To the public, it was glamour, matching outfits, magazine shoots, music collabs. But behind closed doors, things were allegedly much different. In late 2023, Cassie filed a shocking lawsuit, accusing Diddy of manipulation, control, and repeated abuse throughout their relationship. The claims were disturbing, involving surveillance, isolation, and more. The details made headlines instantly. And then, just as quickly, the case was settled out of court. No trial, no testimony, just silence and a check. For many, that silence said everything. Cassie herself never spoke directly after the settlement, but the internet didn't need her to. The filing alone was enough to reopen years of speculation about Diddy's behavior, not just with her, but with others. Social media exploded with theories, anonymous accounts, and old interviews that suddenly felt a lot darker in hindsight. Some fans defended him, others turned away completely. But regardless of where people stood, one thing was clear. This wasn't the first time people had hinted at control issues in Diddy's personal life. Whispers resurfaced about Jennifer Lopez's sudden exit from their relationship, about other women who quietly disappeared from the public eye after dating him. Nothing confirmed, but everything suddenly felt more possible. Still, Diddy kept moving forward, seemingly untouched. He posted inspirational quotes, showed off luxury vacations, and reminded his followers that he was still on top. But behind the scenes, the industry began to shift. Brands went silent. Collaborators hesitated. And those who once called him a genius started to back away. Because when you mix power with silence, people start to wonder, what else is being hidden? And who else was afraid to speak up? And then, just when it seemed like things couldn't get more intense, federal agents knocked on Diddy's door. Up until that day, Diddy was managing the chaos, lawsuits, rumors, online noise. He'd been here before, but this time, the headlines weren't coming from blogs or fan forums. They were coming from federal law enforcement. That morning, in coordinated action, Homeland Security agents raided multiple properties linked to Diddy, including his homes in Los Angeles and Miami. Helicopters circled overhead. Dozens of officers in tactical gear flooded the estates. The scenes looked like something out of a crime drama, but this wasn't fiction. This was very real, and it was all caught on camera. Within hours, video clips went viral. Agents escorting people out of the homes, evidence bags being carried away, entire streets shut down. The internet lit up like wildfire. What were they looking for? What had they found? And why Diddy? At the time of the raid, no charges were filed, not even an official statement from law enforcement. But according to major outlets like Rolling Stone, CNN, and TMZ, the raids were reportedly connected to a federal investigation into human trafficking, weapons, and illegal surveillance. Let that sink in. Human trafficking, weapons, surveillance. That's not gossip. That's national-level criminal territory. Still, because no charges were filed, Diddy's legal team immediately called the actions a witch hunt and claimed he was being targeted based on meritless accusations and sensationalized media. But behind the PR response, the silence was loud. And what made it worse? These raids came just months after Cassie's lawsuit, in which she'd already hinted at some of the same patterns: control, isolation, surveillance. It wasn't hard for the public to start connecting the dots, and they weren't alone. Within days, rumors started swirling that multiple former associates of Diddy had quietly met with federal investigators. Leaked reports suggested that some had turned over phone records, security footage, and even private journals, all allegedly documenting the inner workings of Diddy's lifestyle and the people within it. Even his inner circle began to scatter. Longtime collaborators unfollowed him. Brand partnerships went dark. An upcoming documentary project was suddenly shelved. The machine was pausing, and that was a sign of something major. Of course, Diddy denied it all. He released a cryptic video, walking barefoot on a beach, speaking in vague spiritual metaphors. He talked about being under attack by darkness and finding light through pain. But there was no mention of the raids, no direct response to the claims, just avoidance. And to many, that silence spoke volumes. Was this the beginning of an actual legal downfall? Or was it another moment that would blow over like the others, buried under NDAs, settlements, and silence? That's what made this moment different. Because it wasn't just about reputation anymore. It was about federal agents, sealed files, and years of buried behavior possibly coming to light. And for the first time in his career, Diddy couldn't spin the narrative fast enough. The question now wasn't just what he did, it was who else knew, and for how long. He wasn't just another hip-hop mogul, he was the mogul. The man who turned mixtapes into empires, parties into brands, and an entire generation of black excellence into something marketable, luxurious, and global. He sold inspiration, and millions bought it. But what happens when the mask cracks? In the wake of lawsuits, raids, and explosive allegations, Diddy's once flawless legacy is now under the microscope. And this time, it's not just the media asking questions, it's his own fans. Across TikTok, Twitter, and Reddit, the tone has shifted. Once iconic clips of Diddy hyping up crowds are now edited with eerie music and captions like, "Was he always like this?" His old interviews, the ones where he brags about power, control, and loyalty, are being rewatched through a darker lens. And things that once felt like harmless mogul talk now hit differently. Even fellow celebrities have gone silent. Where once he had a constant circle of A-list collaborators, many have distanced themselves quietly, unfollowing him or removing mentions. It's not cancel culture, it's something more subtle, more permanent. Erasure. Brands have paused, projects have stalled. Events that once leaned on his influence are now moving forward without him. It's the kind of shift that doesn't happen overnight, but once it starts, it's hard to stop. And yet, this isn't just about Diddy. It's about a culture that celebrated power without always asking where it came from. A system that rewards control, but often ignores what happens behind the scenes. And an audience that's learning, painfully, how to separate the art from the artist, or if that's even possible at all. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Some of the most iconic moments in music history came from Diddy's influence. The sound, the style, the swagger, they're woven into pop culture. He shaped artists who inspired millions. He changed the industry. But now, fans are asking, at what cost? There's a generation of former collaborators who say they were left behind, broken, or silenced. Women who say they were controlled, watched, and manipulated. And a growing belief that the power Diddy used to build his empire may have come at the expense of others' safety, freedom, and voices. And that's the piece that hits hardest. Because no matter how many awards you win, how much money you make, or how many records you break, you can't control what people remember. Not forever. Diddy spent years crafting a legacy. But legacies aren't written by press releases. They're written by those left behind. And the people speaking up now? They're not interested in headlines or hype. They want the truth. So the question isn't just whether Diddy will face legal consequences. It's whether his story and everything he built can survive the truth. Power can do a lot of things. It can build empires, turn dreams into reality, rewrite the rules. And in Diddy's case, it did all of that, and more. He transformed hip-hop into a global force. He took the raw energy of the streets and packaged it into something the world couldn't ignore. He sold ambition, luxury, freedom, and for a while, we all believed in it. He didn't just ride the wave of culture, he created it. But here's the question that's haunting everything now. What was the cost? As the lawsuits multiply, as former collaborators speak out, as federal investigators dig deeper, the image of Diddy, the man, the mogul, the mastermind, starts to shift. The celebration becomes a cautionary tale, and that's what makes this story so unsettling. Because this isn't about one mistake or one moment. This is about a pattern, a consistent thread of silence, control, and power being used not just to create, but to allegedly suppress, manipulate, and dominate. It's not just about music, it's about influence. Who gets to hold it, and what they do with it once they have it. And now, Diddy, once considered untouchable, is facing questions he can't dance around, rebrand, or buy his way out of. Not anymore. The power he held for so long is slipping, not because of any one scandal, but because the world around him has changed. In 2025, silence isn't enough. The public demands transparency, victims demand justice, and fans, especially the loyal ones, demand answers. But here's the part no one really talks about. Even if he never faces charges, even if he clears his name in court, some reputations don't survive the truth. Some legacies collapse under the weight of everything they tried to hide. And maybe that's what's happening right now. Because no matter how successful you are, no matter how many billions you make or how many awards you collect, if people stop trusting you, it all starts to fall apart. Not with a bang, but with silence. So what do we make of Diddy's legacy? Is he a visionary or a villain? A product of a broken system or the architect of it? Can both things be true at once? That's the uncomfortable truth. Sometimes power doesn't just corrupt, it hides. And when the spotlight finally hits what's been hiding, it exposes everything. And maybe that's what this story really is. An exposure, a reckoning, a reminder that behind every empire, there's a cost. So now it's your turn to weigh in. Do you think Diddy's legacy can survive this? Was it all built on genius or control? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because one thing's for sure, this isn't the end of the story. Not even close.